Assalamu alaikum students. This is Mrs. Munaza. Today we are going to do the third chapter from the novel Goodbye Mr. Chips. The writer, as you know, is James Hilton. Now, up till now, you have learned that this novel is about a school teacher named Mr. Chipping who had joined the school in 1870. And then you have learned the history and some facts about Brookfield School in chapter number 2. And you have also learned that Mr. Chips, who initially he wanted to discontinue working in the school Brookfield and he wanted to join some first rank school. But gradually he realized that this dream of his was impossible to be fulfilled. Therefore, he gradually started to settle down in Brookfield, and then he stayed over there till his retirement. Now, in this chapter number 3, life of Mr. Chips after taking retirement from school has been described. Over here in these slides, I have written down the main points of the chapter number 3 with certain headings. Now, after retirement, Mr. Chips has shifted. He had left his schoolmaster rooms in Brookfield and had moved from Brookfield hostel boarding to the house of Mrs. Wickett, which was located just across the road from Brookfield. Again, this we have been told in the first chapter. Now, the house in which Mrs. Chips is now residing as a paying guest, the writer tells us that apparently from the outward appearance of the house was not very attractive. It was ugly and pretentious. It was ugly and pretentious. Pretentious means showy. Okay, it was ugly and pretentious, ostentatious. It was showy. That is, we can say numaish in Urdu. However, it was the convenience. It was convenient for Mr. Chips to live over there. Why was it convenient? Because by living over there, he was in a way in touch with Brookfield. We will learn about it on the later slides. And so it was convenient because it was comfortable and it was across the school, across the road from the school. It was across the road from the school. And then the room which Mrs. Wickett had let him was, as you've seen, it was small, but it was sunny and comfortable. And Mrs. Chips had furnished it with schoolmasterly taste. It was simply furnished with schoolmasterly taste. What was there in his room? In his room, there were related to schoolmasterly taste. There were bookshelves which contained classical books like the books of Virgil and Xenophon. And then there were some books on history, and some ballad letters were there. There were also some cheap editions of detective novels, which Mr. Chips was really fond of reading, as you have been told in chapter number 1 that Mr. Chips, before sleeping, would take a novel to bed. And then there were sporting trophies and fixture cards with signed photographs of boys and men on the mantelpiece. Now, fixture cards are the cards that could stand, and mantelpiece is basically in Urdu we call to mantelpiece as अंगीठी के ऊपर वाली जो जगह होती है, that is mantelpiece. And then Mr. Chips was a classical teacher of classical languages, Greek and Latin, and so there were pictures of Acropolis and the Forum on the wall. Acropolis is basically in Athens, and it was the sacred sanctuary of the Greeks. And the forum used to be the market was the marketplace in Athens, where the Greeks used to, the Romans used to gather and discuss important matters. And then there was a worn-out Turkish carpet and big easy chairs in his room. Now, what kind of life he was spending after retirement? You have been told in the previous chapter number 1 about it, and here the writer has given a further detail of his life after retirement. Now, Mr. Chess was an old white hair, head, but little bald. This is his physical appearance now. And what he would do, he would scroll across this, he would stroll across, that is walk across the road in the afternoon and saw boys playing games. So on milder days, on days when it when the sunlight was there, he would walk across the road and see and saw the boys playing games on the playground. He would smile and exchange a few words with the boys when they touched their caps to show respect to him. The boys of that field would show him respect by saying or by by greeting him or by touching their caps, and he would in return smile or exchange talk to them. And then another important activity in which Mr. Chips was engaged was to invite new Brookfield students and masters to his place. So he would invite new masters at Brookfield and new students at Brookfield to his place on tea, and so that he may stay in touch with the school. Then after these guests left, Mr. Chips used to discuss old students with Mrs. Wickett. And now it used to be his favorite question. He would ask the boy or the master coming over there at Brookfield, invited to tea by him, that had he got any relative of his who had been a student of Brookfield, so that Mr. Chips could connect the new student or the new master with the older one or with a student or colleague. So, and then Mr. Chips also used to write occasional letters, and his writing was thin, spidery, but legible. He would take tea in front of wire, correct next edition of Brookfieldian Directory, wrote letters, and he used to read the Times articles. The Times is the name of a newspaper, which had quotations from the classical languages, that's Greek and Latin. He would find special pleasure in reading those articles because it gave him a sort of satisfaction that he could understand the quotations, the classical quotations used in the essay, in the article. Regarding his financial position, we are told that he had no financial problem at all. He had adequate, sufficient pension besides some savings. And so the writer says that in Mr. Chips, the type of life Mr. Chips was spending was quite peaceful and placid. Placid means comfortable. So it was peaceful and placid, calm, tranquil life which he was spending, for he could afford and buy anything he wanted. Now there are certain characters which are introduced. And the first character which is introduced is that of Mrs. Wickett. We are told that Mrs. Wickett was in charge of linen room at her school before she saved money. And she was very kind and caring. We have been told in the first chapter that Dr. Merriwell used to instruct Mrs. Wickett to take care of Mr. Chips, especially in cold weather and when cold weather. And now in this chapter we are told that it was she who used to lay down the table for the guests of Chips and would clear away the table after the guests leave. Had left. And then the next character which is introduced in the in this chapter is that of Collingwood. Now, Collingwood was an ex-student of Brookfield and Chips, and Mr. Chips once thrashed him as he was climbing the gymnasium rope, and Chips feared that he might get hurt. Mrs. Wickett also recalled him. Mrs. Wickett also remembered him. She recalled him as a cheeky fellow, as a naughty boy, but the kind of naughty person who did not intend, who did not wish to harm anyone, who simply draw pleasure, who simply live happily. We are also told that Collingwood joined army, and then he had won the DSO medal, and he had become major, and then he died in Egypt while serving the country. Another important aspect which this chapter covers is the qualities of Mr. Chips as a host. Now, Mr. Chips, we are told that he used to invite new students and masters of school Brookfield. It had become Strip's habit to ask them to come to join him on tea at 4 o'clock in the evening for 1 hour, and he used to receive and bid farewell to his guests at the porch. Mr. Chips was hospitable. Guests, as a hospitable host, he would never let plates of his guests empty. He used to serve his guest with walnut cake with pink icing, and it was from Redaway's Bakery in the village. And during winters, there used to be crumpets so soaked in the butter. And the most amusing sight for the guests, and especially for the young boys, was Mr. Chips mixing teas from different caddies, from different boxes. He used to carefully take a spoonful of tea and milk or sugar from the boxes. And Mr. Chips was very much regular in keeping the duration of the meeting fixed for 1 hour. Exactly after 1 hour, he would look at his watch and told the boy that, "I'm sorry, you can't stay here any longer." So this was what Mr. Chips was like a guest, like a host, sorry, as a host. Now, Mr. Chips as a scholar. We are told in this chapter that he was not a very profound scholar, though he taught Greek and Latin for such a long period of time, and though he considered that Latin and Greek are not dead languages as such, but are the languages from which people could learn a few codes to embellish their writings. And he would recognize the quotes from the classical languages which appear in the newspaper, and he would try to read Virgil and Xenophon at home now after retirement, but he could not stand reading these books any longer and would soon return to popular literature, to the detective stories of Inspector French and Dr. Thorndyke. The comments which the boys on meeting after meeting, or rather after meeting with Mr. Chips would give were usually like, "Decent old boy gives you a jolly good tea." Now this such sort of remarks are given by the boys, and on the writer tells us that on the specific autumn term they visited two new masters, and one of them said about Mr. Chips that he was quite a character, and he also said that all that was about mixing tea, and he labeled him as a typical bachelor, which the writer tells us was not true, for Mr. Chips did marry, but it was so long ago that nobody remembered. Now, students, this was the gist of the chapter, along with important aspects which I have covered with you. Now, what you are supposed to do is to form questions on all these points and write down on your notebooks. Okay, and send to me by tomorrow by 12 o'clock. Now, word synonyms. Now, there are a number of words which are used in this chapter, and the meanings of which you would like to know. So the first word is pretentious. Now pretentious, as I have already told you, it means showy. Okay, numaish, ostentatious. Then stroll. Stroll means to amble, to walk. जैसे हम उर्दू में नहीं कहते मटर गश्त करना, that is this. Then caddies. Now what is caddies? Yes, caddies mean boxes, small boxes, छोटे डब्बे, small boxes. Then cheeky. Cheeky means naughty, you may say rude, disobedient. Mental peace. Mental peace, as I've told you, it's अंगीठी के ऊपर वाली जगह जो होती है, that is called mental peace, जिसको हम calmness भी बोलते हैं. Okay, and then ballet letters. Ballet letters are literary works, especially essays and poetry, and they are valued for their aesthetic worth rather than of the information or their content. Then profound. Profound. Profound means penetrating, deep. Okay, here it is used in the sense of so penetrating. Then Freemasonry. Freemasonry means fellowship. Legible. Legible means that could be read easily. That could be read. So पढ़ सकते हैं, readable. Soaked. Soaked means drenched. भीगा हुआ होना. Thrashed. To beat. Placid. Calm, tranquil. Then spidery. Spidery, the writing which consists of thick, dark, bending lines, like लंबी और बारीक सी जो writing होती है. Okay. Now assiduous. Assiduous means diligent, hardworking. Swindling, that is cheating. Cheating. Now there are certain phrases used in the chapter. For example, let two, stroll across, getting to know, having dumped tea, in front of, climbing onto, saved up, seasoning off, come out of, wind up with, took down, derived from, active for his age. Now you are supposed to write, to make make use of these phrases into meaningful sentences so that the meaning of these phrases could be understood. Another important thing which I want you to focus on, if you go through the text, as I hope you have, you will come to know that the whole chapter is written in the past tense, especially past indefinite tense. And why is it so? Because remember, past indefinite tense is used for describing past events which have nothing to do with the present. Moreover, it is the tense which we use to summarize or to relate some past incident. Then, have you noticed, girls, the use of would and might? Now, would is used, would is a helping verb, it is an auxiliary, and there are people who say that would is the past tense of will, but would has its own usage. We use would when we want to talk about something which a person used to do, which a person used to do in the past continually. So would is used for such thing. For example, Mr. Chips would invite new masters to his place. Okay, then might. The second word, the use of might. Have you noticed it? Might. Might is again not the past tense of may. It contains more probability than may. Okay, so might contains probability. Then you have noticed, perhaps you have noticed the use of the preposition at and beside. At is used with reference to a place when you want to convey exact location, and with reference time when you want to convey exact time. Okay, otherwise we use in. And then besides is also another preposition. Iske ilawa. Okay, so I hope when you will when you will read this chapter once again after listening to this video lecture, you would be focusing on these on this and this grammatical aspect of the chapter. Thank you very much for giving me your time.